did. It did.
Well, surf music originated in Leighton at the end of the 19th century in London. A lot of people really don't know that. But the Huguenots, after they colonised the East End, after the Jews came over, were local weavers and would make a fine living through the streets of Spitalfields, weaving the finest of cloths. And throughout their daily travails, they would hum simple songs to each other and play music on simple instruments out of boxes of their trade. And they were very influenced by the music from the Iberian Peninsula, which is of course a Muslim community originally before it became Spain as we know it, post-Franco of course. And the Spanish influences were quite sort of prevalent towards the end of the 19th century. And when they weren't selling, they used to be, because of the tonnage of shipping in the docklands around the Thames, increasingly ships became bigger and bigger. And many would be very bad at observing the speed limit there, and would get up to top speeds of 50 miles an hour sometimes down the Thames Reach between Greenwich and Tilbury, causing an enormous amount of wake and surf to be kicked up. And local street urchins would assemble boxes and litter, because the Thames was very dirty in those days. It almost caught fire in 1902, of course, and would catch the waves from the bows and, play about, fall over, and what we know as surf on the bows of these sort of large vessels as they headed out to sea. And so it wasn't long before surfing as we know it was coined. I mean, a lot of people make the mistake that it actually came from somewhere like Hawaii, which we know was flat as a mill pond till up about the 1920s. So I mean, so as a result, obviously surfing comes from London, from the East End, round Wapping Steps and what have you. So we started Jack the Ripper, we started surfing, and most other things as well. So that collision of rock and roll and East End surfing sort of found its apogee in the early 50s with the influences of the Iberian Peninsula, mainly, which is exemplified in the acoustic guitar, the flamenco. Because obviously London is the flamenco capital of the world as well, and certainly at that time Spanish was the second tongue in London throughout the 50s. The BBC used to transcribe all its services from English into Spanish and Portuguese in some instances. And this found its fullest expression in post-war austerity in the early 50s when rationing was still going on. And people used to sort of go down to the Thames and have clam bakes and dance to sort of rock and roll, and the sort of the flamenco influence, the sort of the lead guitar influence of flamenco playing almost, because there's a certain, it's rhythmic, yes, but also it follows the melody line, was instrumental in sort of inspiring a lot of new musicians, from, you know, Dick Dale to the Shadows to Chaz and Dave, and I didn't see much sign of the chimpanzees at that point. I think they'd gone off to do other things, or other arrangements were made.